What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So recently we had talked about the PlayStation 6 and a handheld apparently that Sony was planning to go alongside of their next generation system, but now based on some new details, there's a whole other system to add to the mix, and it seems that handheld is being lined up as Sony looking to take on the Switch 2 and Nintendo. So there's a lot to go over here, which we will do that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Capcom, and while they have been on this roll of reviving old IPs and remaking many of them, there seems to be one project in particular that they're struggling with, seeing multiple cancellations, and we'll look into that. And Star Wars Outlaws. There's a lot of questions around the Switch 2 release since we really haven't seen anything about it, and now a new listing that's updated and changed the file size has people asking even more questions, but all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Lost Soulicide. It's out today. And here's the thing. We don't have any reviews for the game because, well, even if they did send out review codes, the version that reviewers would have been playing wouldn't be the version that everyone else would be playing today, since the day one patch, according to just the studio in general, said, yeah, it's gonna be fixing a lot of stuff. So that Reddit post that said it was struggling with 20 FPS in some areas, that pre-release version, I guess at this point, not necessarily the one that people are playing right now on stream. I had a chance to check into it, and it's not looking great so far, just based on the presentation and like 30 minutes or so that I had a chance to check out there on a stream. But there is a demo that is now live. This we can see over on Gematsu, where they say Sony Interactive Entertainment developer AltaZero Games will release a demo for a single-player action-adventure RPG Lost Soulicide for PlayStation 5 and PC. So it is available on Steam. Looking at some of the details for it, it appears you're going to fight 2 boss battles, and your save data will not carry over to the full game. So if anything, it'll give you a chance to see how it's running there, say on your PlayStation 5 or on your setup for PC. But for me, I'm just kind of hanging out and waiting to see how things go with this one, especially as reviews, I'm sure, start to trickle out next week. For now, though, I'm playing Metal Gear Solid Delta and dealing with the performance there. Also, we did get an update for Ghost of Yotei, this over on Sucker Punch's official account, where they say Ghost of Yotei has officially gone gold. The game is coming out October 2nd, so there you go. Not that we really expected any kind of delay, but this is just confirmation that yes, it will be out in roughly, 6 weeks or so, 5 or 6 weeks. And I mean, I'm jumping into this one day one. The thing is, it hasn't been as exciting as Ghost of Tsushima for me leading up to that release, because that felt brand new and fresh and interesting for Sucker Punch. While this game still looks really fun, we have kind of had a Ghost of Tsushima already, so it's like, oh, cool, it's going to be that, just better and more of it, which is fine. But this is kind of what we run into with the sequels of these games, especially recently from Sony and their first-party studios. It's not been there, done that, but it's kind of close to it. Still, though, I'm excited for Ghost of Yotei. It's coming out October 2nd. I'll pick it up right away. No worry about some kind of last-second delay, though. It's gone gold.
Today's video is sponsored by Satisfye and their new Zen Grip 2. This is the ultimate ergonomic game changer for your Switch 2. Designed with gamers in mind, this grip features innovative free float technology, elevating your console just enough to maximize airflow and keep things cool even during long game sessions. Its asymmetrical ergonomic shape ensures correct hand placement that mirrors traditional console controllers, reducing fatigue, letting you play longer without the hand cramps. Despite its sturdy, productive build, the Zen 2 remains fully dockable, giving you seamless access to every port and ease of charging at any time. There's built-in storage for up to 2 game cards and a vertical stand that lets you rest your device upright while charging. Installation is a breeze. Just slide your Switch 2 in from the top and press down until it seats securely in place. Plus, the non-slip rubberized grip, along with a scratch-resistant perfect fit design, means confidence in hand, not just comfort. Click the link in the description below to step up your handheld experience with the Zen Grip 2 and embrace the future of ergonomics and performance. Thanks to Satisfye for sponsoring today's video.
And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 6, the PlayStation 6S, and the PlayStation 6 handheld, codenamed Canis. Now, this was from a new video that was published by Moore's Law is Dead, who, when it comes to Sony stuff specifically, I definitely pay attention to. because Sony themselves have copyright struck and ripped down videos they've put up there because they had developer documents and showed a little too much of it, and Sony went ahead and laid into them with the copyright strike. So it's very clear that it seems like they say they have an in at AMD, but somebody there certainly has legitimate information around plans that Sony has in place for development, specifically when it comes to, say, the fabrication of the different chipsets and the configuration there. Nonetheless, he went over some new details that seems to take that handheld that we were discussing previously and turn it more into a Switch 2 competitor? So this becomes kind of interesting, since while we look at Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all vying for our attention, we kind of have Nintendo off to the side by themselves, and then Sony and Microsoft kind of duking it out over the high-end console box. And it's very clear that Sony, out of, the three of them, when it comes to just a box that you put under your TV for 4K visuals, they're the best ones at selling it at this time. But Nintendo is the best one at selling handhelds, and now we're seeing the best one at selling hybrid systems. But it looks like Sony may be throwing their hat in the ring here. So let's go over some of the details that were shared by Moore's Law is Dead. I will also have his video linked down below in the description, the sources where he really goes into detail for all this stuff. I'll give you guys some of the quick notes on this one, okay? So starting at the top, it's still that Zen 6C CPU with 4 cores. There's also 2 low power cores, which would make sense for a more efficient setup in portable play when it's reliant on a battery. 16 RDNA 5 compute units. He mentioned several RAM configurations or amounts, and he says there's no real way of telling how exactly they're going to go about this, and that's true. They can play around with the different RAM configurations. We even heard a story back in the day with the Switch 1 where Nintendo was convinced by Capcom almost at the last minute while they were putting everything together to go with 4 gigabytes instead of 3 gigabytes. So yeah, they can kind of play around with how much RAM goes into this thing. I don't want to say up to last minute, but closer to it outside of just developing this chipset. Now he mentions in terms of just estimation for its performance, 50 to 75% rasterization performance of the PlayStation 5, which this is important to note that the way that Sony is kind of trending right now, they are looking more towards the idea of using the machine learning and AI upscaling in order to close the gap for any raw performance deficiencies, okay? So I wouldn't look at 50 to 75% rasterization performance of PS5 and go, that's it. It's not going to be able to turn in what the PS5 can. No, actually, I think it's going to be better than the PS5 in terms of like visual and even performance in general in dock mode, which we'll get to here in a minute. So he also mentions better ray tracing by nearly double than the PS5, and there are different CPU frequencies depending on, get this, handheld or docked mode. That is very important to note. Different profiles means, yes, they're expecting you to go one way or the other with it, having it in docked mode. I assume out of the box then, as in this thing would be sold as with the handheld itself, and then some sort of docking mechanism like we see with the Switch 2. I don't think it even makes sense for them to put the dock separately. It's just, okay, you can buy it separately, that's fine, but that seems like core functionality of this device. Although they're also a company that will sell you a system without the Blu-ray drive, you gotta buy that separately while selling a whole host of physical media. Still though, the screen, 1080p, looking at 60 to 120 hertz display, I would assume it's at least 120 hertz. That would make sense. Haptics, SD card support, the M.2 storage internally there. Curious if that's even upgradable. I assume they're going to rely on SD Express support, which, that solves a major weak point of the Vita, which were those proprietary memory cards that were incredibly expensive at that time, remember? Anyway, price estimates. Now, okay, so he has a range going on here, $350 to $550, depending on Sony's strategy. So they're going to subsidize it or they're not. They're going to look to make money on it. I think a device like this, and we'll talk about some of the other strategies here soon, anything they don't have a disk drive attached to out of the box, I think Sony will be more inclined to subsidize it because they know if you buy it, you're going to go to their digital storefront. Okay, there's not going to be you going to the store and buying a disc to put in this Canis handheld, as it's codenamed. The other system that was mentioned here that's new to the equation, the PS6S, at least I guess that's what we're dubbing it, because it's very reminiscent, we'll say, of the Xbox Series S. There's also another system that's very reminiscent of that I'll get to in a second, but this could be using the Canis chipset, basically the handheld chipset here, in what I assume would be a fairly small box, okay? And it enables Sony to make what would really just be a docked handheld here with Canis, but in that small box. All right, so think about it that way. The same configuration there from the handheld, but moved over. What system from the Vita generation should that remind you of? The Vita TV. So Sony has kind of done that strategy before, and it didn't work. But there is one crucial thing that we have to highlight here, okay? That completely differentiates this from the Vita or even PSP generation. Now, the PS6S, once again, a range of pricing, $250 to $400. According to Moore's Law is Dead, he was kind of going by build of materials and shopping around. Here's the thing with that, all right? That there's a lot of stuff going on right now, tariffs and inflation, and it's so difficult to judge what the finalized price will be 2-3 years from now. It's going to be very difficult. So I get the price range of how aggressive does Sony want to get with it. We got to figure out just where the world's going to be in a couple of years. But okay, let's say the PS6S comes in at $400, even $450. It's like, okay, well, that's cheaper or the same price as a PS5. It'll slot right in there to replace that of naturally fully backwards compatible PS4, PS5, the whole deal there. Now, the big system, the one that enthusiasts will be more looking towards, is just PS6 Orion, okay? We've already gone over the specifications for it. Yes, it's a very powerful system, but it's also a very cost-conscious system. If you want to hear more about that, again, you can check Moore's Law is Dead video, or even the video I went over it a few weeks ago. And here's the thing. The price estimate on this one with build of materials, according to Moore's Law is Dead, is $550 to $800. Okay. I think this system, PS6 Orion, comes in at $600 because I think they'll ship it without the disk drive, and I think because of that, they'll be able to justify subsidizing it more since you'll be going to the storefront, all right? Manufacturing all systems seem to be planned for mid-2027. They say possible holiday 2027 release. I'd be shocked at that, but I also can't put it in the realm of it just being impossible because that would be a 7-year cycle, just like the PS5 and the Xbox Series, or just like the PS4 and the Xbox One, I say, went through. Just this generation felt kind of delayed because in 2020, the whole pandemic stuff going on from there, it sort of, I think, elongated this generation more so than maybe Sony was thinking it would. And while you plan for these next generation systems for years and years and years, that is certainly something with this pandemic stuff that would have thrown that through a loop completely, and they could end up being a year ahead of schedule for this development, because I do think it would make more sense for the PS6, the PS6S, and the PS6 handheld, a whole slew of systems, to come out maybe in 2028 or 2029. Here's the thing, though, that's interesting. The handheld can kind of come out whenever, because it would be positioned at that time as more so playing PlayStation 5 games on the go. So if they did a staggered release, as in the PS6 handheld, although I assume they're going to call it something different. I don't think it's like PS6 handheld or something. They'll have to come up with a different name for it. But let's just say they release it in 2027. They could follow up that release with the PS6 and the PS6S in 2028. I know it's very exciting to hear about the next generation discussion right now because I see so many people say, I'm good with the PS5. Sure. But I also see a lot of people go, man, it would be really neat to have a handheld from Sony that was native and not that PlayStation Portal. Well, there you go. And here, it would also dock and give you PS5-like performance. And if that's the case, I think there are a lot of people who might even gravitate towards that more so than... Is it possible that the PlayStation 6 handheld that is dockable and gives you PS5, probably better than PS5-like experience, would people be more inclined to buy that than the PS6 that very well could be $600 to $700? It wouldn't shock me, actually, just based on how well Nintendo is selling with the Switch 2. And yes, the hybrid model certainly is a driving force there, along with Nintendo's games that they make. I don't know, that'd be interesting to see. But either way, I like the idea of Sony making a hybrid system because it adds competition to the market, and that's what we need across the board to continue not only driving technology forward, but also hopefully keeping prices. At this time, we just gotta hope prices stay where they are. And that's what you need when it comes to competition like this. So I'm actually hoping it is 2027 for the handheld. The other systems, they can wait a bit, but the handheld is probably the one thing I'm the most interested to see from Sony and how they tackle that. Next up, let's talk about Capcom, as there was some unfortunate news that got out there for Dino Crisis fans, and this started to make the rounds very, very quickly on social media, as a few days ago, there was a trademark that popped up for Dino Crisis. So, I mean, hope was sky high then. It's like, oh, finally, Capcom is going to do it. They're going to announce a remake for Dino Crisis or a brand new one, and the trailer won't end with the title Exoprimal, which that's the thing. I hope Capcom saw the reaction and then the letdown when that title came up, because people were so excited at the idea of Dino Crisis, Exoprimal, and it's like, that's too bad. Anyway, it does seem that Capcom has been playing around with the idea of reviving Dino Crisis. And it's going to be one crazy revival, because the last one, I believe, was Dino Crisis 3 on the original Xbox, and you can go look up reviews for that. But let's take a look. This was making the rounds on social media, and it's from Dusk Golem, who says, I hope Capcom eventually figures out what they want to do with Dino Crisis. For the record, and I don't believe this is new info, but there has been a couple attempts in the last decade to remake Dino Crisis. The first by Capcom Vancouver before they were shut down. Still have some of the leaked materials for that on my hard drive, actually. The second a few years ago, but just wasn't turning out good, so it got scrapped. I hope they one day figure out how they want to go forward with Dino Crisis and it's able to pass prototyping stages. Now, there are a number of things that would cause an older title to get canceled internally. Could be the gameplay structure didn't necessarily move to the modern era well. Could be even the visual style, the art style. While you can make things look more realistic, it's like, does it keep the same tone from back in the day and what they were going for? See, Capcom did a very good job with Resident Evil, starting with Resident Evil 2 Remake, and since then. But I also feel like there are probably a lot of prototypes that went through these same phases to try to get it just right, because you do still have to, as they say, remake. You got to remake many parts of it, because it's not necessarily going to be one-to-one as well from the PS1 era, when there was a lot left up to the imagination. So with that in mind, I still think it's worth really putting forth the effort for Dino Crisis. It's just, while it is very close to Resident Evil, I get it. And that's kind of how it was back then too, sure. It still can have sort of its own feeling, of course, with like the dinosaurs and stuff in the game. But I think it can still run alongside of Resident Evil, and they just play more and more into, I guess, some of the horror. I guess some of the horror elements. It can be kind of tough if you're fighting against dinosaurs and the visuals and stuff don't necessarily line up as they would like. That's the thing. It's hard to really tell what's the hang up here. All I can think of is maybe some of the older gameplay mechanics and the structure of the game isn't necessarily lining up how they would want it to be. Something similar to Resident Evil 2 Remake. But let me know down in the comments what you think could be the big hang up behind the scenes for Capcom apparently trying Dino Crisis multiple times and canceling it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws, because there's a lot of questions around this game, since we really haven't seen much of it. Like, we had some quick shots looking at it in the trailer when they first showed it off. We haven't really seen much of an extended gameplay session, nothing really for it with the Switch 2, and it's out September 4th, so it's coming up pretty quick. Well, now we're starting to see some changes in the background for this when it comes to the file size, and I'm not someone necessarily to point at a small file size and be like, this game's gonna be terrible. Went through that with, say, Mario Odyssey, where it's a very small file size. Hey, it turns out Nintendo is pretty good at compressing their stuff because the game was awesome and it was a pretty large game. Well, this is Ubisoft, it's a third-party game, and we've seen a lot of third-party games not really care much about file size, even on the Switch 2. Take a look at WWE or Madden, just as a couple of quick examples. But this we can see posted. This is over on My Nintendo News, saying the file size back in July, this is for Star Wars Outlaws, was 20.6 gigabytes, and the file size has now shrunk down to 18.3 gigabytes. Some are wondering if this is like a typo or some kind of mistake. I mean, that'd be a weird mistake to make, to be like, okay, no, 18.3 gigabytes. I mean, that seems like it's it. I also don't necessarily believe that Ubisoft all of a sudden is like, oh, we got our compression stuff figured out. Instead of it being 50 to 60 gigabytes, like it's on every other system, we got it figured out, guys. Now it's 18 gigabytes. Something about this release is just throwing me off completely. And it might be because the game doesn't even really function on the Steam Deck, but now it's going to show up and run decent or well on the Switch 2. Not that they couldn't necessarily figure it out when they have targeted hardware in front of them that they feel like they could sell copies on of a game that has underperformed up to this point. So maybe they really did put in some effort and get it to where it's running great. I'm skeptical, I'll say. I need to see it in action, and I going out and buying Star Wars Outlaws just to see how it runs on the Switch 2, and I'm already kind of like, on it if it's, I mean, the game itself, but also I'm not really sure if it's actually going to run well at all on the Switch 2, just based on, again, how that game is performed in like-minded systems. I'm still curious. So I don't know, maybe I can get a review copy from Ubisoft and then we can just fire it up and play it. Kind of like I did with Star Wars Outlaws when it first came out, but in this case, we'll just see how it performs on the Switch 2. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if Sony releases a cheaper PS6S that's just a little stronger than the PS5 and a more expensive PS6 that's multiple times stronger than the PS5, which one would you be more interested in buying? 69%, okay, I think you guys did it on purpose, voted for PS6. I said roughly 700-ish. I think it'll be slightly cheaper now than what the PS5 Pro is, but still, I'm going to go for 700-ish just to be safe. And then the PS6S at 400-ish. I was kind of thinking, what if it was like half the price just about of the PS6? Either way, though, that's where I set it. And 31% versus 69%. I do feel like some are like, you know what, if I'm going to upgrade, I'm going to upgrade once for the generation, and that'll be that. And look, the people with the PS5 now, did just that. They seem pretty happy with it. And they're rolling along even into maybe 2030 or 2031. Just fine with the PS5. I also saw many people in the comments who were saying just that. I'm good with my PS5. I don't need a PS6 in a couple of years. And that's going to be a very messy situation as we get further and further along here into 2027 for the holiday. If Sony decides to do that, you're still going to have the PS4 right there and the PS5 where people are like, I don't really need to go get a new system. This is cool. Games are still coming out for it. I think it's be even harder to get people to make the move over to the PS6 from the PS5. And that is probably going to be a very, very long cross-gen. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Hair Razor, who says, I'm confused. As a physical collector, isn't cloud gaming even worse than digital? If that's what you're fully relying on, then yes, because at least digital versions of the game, if you've checked in, I don't know, some like a day or two ago or something, you can still play it, say, if the internet goes out, all right? However, if you take a look at cloud gaming, if the internet goes out, that's it. You can't play it. Also, if you're a physical collector, okay, and you go from that to cloud gaming, so it's not even, the game doesn't even exist on your SSD or something, right? That is far removed from having it on your shelf. So I think the strategy here has been, as we've gone through a couple of generations now where digital is becoming more and more normalized and physical games are like, they keep showing the chart 15, 20% of the market or something, even though I kind of think it's a little larger than that than what they're reporting. But you see that, you're like, okay, how many, another generation, all digital. And then I think we go from that. So digital will be here, and then we'll slowly start to work towards cloud gaming with other generations that come through, mostly because that's what the big publishers want. Ubisoft is one that's been very vocal about the idea of cloud gaming being the future, to the point, if you remember back in the day with Google Stadia, they offered up Assassin's Creed Odyssey as the test game, and East Guillermo was all excited about it and stuff. It's like, yeah, they get a lot of control out of cloud gaming. You don't even have to have the game on your system to play it, and they can control when you play it and when you don't, as in it won't leak out, or hey, when it's time to kill that card game because the licensing is gone, that game is gone. Like, it's not even like, oh, there's still used copies out there. Oh, if you bought it in the past, we have to uphold these servers so you can download it. No, that's it. They just flip the switch, it's gone. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe hear more about how gamers are getting really tired of some of the optimization issues, especially what we've seen recently with Metal Gear Solid Delta's release. I'll leave that in the video right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.